So, hello YouTube. It's been a while. I do want to talk about the direction of this channel, not just for myself, but also the viewers. I just want to say to begin, thank you all for 400 subscribers. Really, thank you. It's when I first started the channel, getting the first few subscribers, I thought, oh, 50, 100, that's insane that I got that far. And several years down the line, here I am. Still, it's a very relatively small channel, but I'm enjoying, the stuff I post. However, I do want to say that there are things I do want to do on this channel that have just been a struggle, whether that's either internally my, how do you say, insecurities. I have this video in the works. It's done, but I need to redo like 2 minutes of it, right? And it requires 10 minutes more of redone voiceover and also a redone shot of a certain aspect that originally had my friend in it, but I do prefer having myself instead, not only because of his own personal career choices, which have made the original option not possible anymore, but also because it was originally a school project that I want to actually post onto YouTube, so I just it's just never I've never gotten back to finishing that up. Both that's in part my procrastination, but also just this feeling of not really inadequacy, but more so, I guess I just feel very anxious about acting the part that he did. It's a very simple part, and I do it all the time. I just sit in front of the camera and I'll voice over him speaking Chinese, like Mandarin Chinese, with myself doing the weird mouthing thing, right? Like I could do that easily, but I'm so afraid to. I don't know. But anyways, like transit, right? I've been doing a lot of transit. You also guys see my shorts about the MBTA and Amtrak and all that. And that's what I've been doing, especially over the summer. I've done a lot of advocacy for the MBTA. And I've realized this soft power need, especially when it comes to transit. And I want to talk a little bit about that. You see, there's this issue in transit where you have to push for accountability and show the problems within the transit system. But at the same time, you have to be able to support and encourage others who don't take transit or don't take transit as often to become a rider or even better, an advocate. People not just who are engineers or in school, right? Who have not just the time, but also are really into that type of thing, whether they're in the field as an engineer or they're someone who is working within politics or economics, where that does kind of interact with their field. And so, therefore, gaining that type of knowledge is beneficial to them. However, to the regular layman, whether they are a office worker, a restaurant chef, janitor, clerk, whatever, that type of information not only will not stick to you, but also there's this unwillingness because it's like it's extra work, extra things to remember, and sometimes it's not worth remembering compared to other things like what's in your workplace, what time is this meeting that you have to go to for work, right? As opposed to what time do you have to go to for this MBTA meeting or the other three that are occurring this month. That type of advocacy requires time, and a lot of people who are transit riders don't have that time. They are working class, a majority of them. And because of that, they don't have the ability to spare a 10 a.m. meeting. They have to come to work, they have to wake up at 7 o'clock, be at work by 8 or 9, and they'll be out 5, maybe 6. They can't take that time off. And for many, especially paycheck to paycheck, that could mean the difference of whether they can afford rent or food for a day, or rent for that month, and or even in some cases, risking their job. They don't have that ability to do so. And so this type of advocacy requires people who can represent those voices and those who have the time and money to be able to spend or risk to do that type of work. There are some organizations that they have enough funding that those who are advocating are paid workers, right? They're paid to do that job. But those positions are few and in between. And they also require certain set of skills, specifically data engineering. And it is true a lot of them are doing that work. But at the same time, again, those who are taking transit for the most part don't have that time. Their problems are not voiced, and the issues that they see day by day cannot be heard, let alone are being listened to. Like people don't hear them because they're, just the average Joe. They'll talk to their friends about it. They'll maybe post within their little community circles, whether that be, Discord or Twitter or Facebook. But the outreach and the reach they'll get towards the MBTA themselves or any other transit agency for that matter, SEPTA, Metro Transit, like BART even, it's like generally they probably won't see those comments or those problems. And as a result, those people aren't heard. And so as an advocate, you have to be that voice for them. Sometimes, it's hard because when you go to the meetings, majority of people going there are generally the officials. You'll be easily 1-to-1 exchange rate. For every official, there's one person that's either advocate or is a rider that, has a complaint for that day. There's not many people who have the time or the willingness to do that. As opposed to community events like within like Boston Chinatown. Oh, they'll bring in dozens easily. Like they'll share the news and what's happening and the room will get filled. Not so much with transit. And to build that community is difficult, and that's kind of what I've been doing a lot lately. I myself am an advocate, and I've been working a lot with people who also do transit advocacy. You build those connections. And at the same time, I'm also trying to encourage people, my friends especially, who take transit and are interested in this type of thing. But like, unsurprisingly, a lot of people are not interested in that type of work. It's very boring, I understand, and it's a lot of time being invested. When you go to these rallies, just spend 2 or 3 hours easily just talking to other people about the problems going on and trying to spread the word about, this event, whether that be a panel falling on a woman's, a person getting hit by a train, or someone's hand getting stuck in the door, or even the floods within the system because of a flash flood and there's no like flood protection. Those occur on the system. And not everyone is aware that happened except for those that know about it or those who bother to check on that type of news. Like transit news in general is harder to come by than, celebrity drama, a car crash, police shootings. It's not really up there in people's priority or minds because of the nature of transit. It's not on everyone's minds. It's not on people's minds, especially if they don't ride, or if they're not an advocate, or if they don't really participate in that type of field. You have these bubbles, and sometimes you do have to poke around and pop in, but to convince people by popping in is also difficult. So some of the times the best way you can do is just through soft power, and that's what I've been doing a lot with this channel lately is just posting, these nice photos and videos like, hey, this is a train passing by the station that I'm about to ride in. Like 95% of the time of like the trains I post are ones I'm about to hop on, right? Or I'm at the station that I will eventually take one. Whether it's because I just got off the train, I'm videoing them leaving, or I entered the station and I videoed them coming in. Or in some occasions, I'll come into the station, watch a train or two pass by, right? And then go to the other station within, right, to make that transfer. Like, say, State Street, you have the orange line and blue line. I could take a video of the blue line, but then go ride the orange line. Or in Park Street, where I find it a little bit more easier, going from the red line and green line, or South Station, red line and commuter rail, or North Station with green line, orange line, commuter rail, that type of thing. And that type of enjoyment, that type of feeling you get, when you ride and not having to focus so much on the road and be able to sit in with your thoughts or to read wherever you're looking at, it's more comforting, in my opinion. And I want that experience to be shared with others. And I will, at some point, if I get the confidence, something that I really need actually, and probably should push myself to do, will eventually post that video of the railroad. It is, it was a project, right, on World War II, and it was about the discussion of railroads and its effects, especially within the United States. Initially, I wanted this whole thing to compare and contrast like US, UK, and Russia, but then I just squeeze it down to only internally within the US because it was a much more niche topic, and also one I could focus on more in depth rather than just general knowledge. The normie stuff is fine to like skim over as general knowledge and like recognize that this existed, but I really want to go more in depth on that. And I did my best considering not only the time frame I had, but also the limited resources that I had because it's something I've not really done yet, and I really want to avoid Wikipedia for that type of thing. Some of the stuff I did find and learned came much later after the fact. I found the MBTA gift shop. I found like this manual for Amtrak. It's a safety manual from 1994, and even though it's outdated by almost 30 years now, it still gives insight onto the problems and issues we have nowadays. And it does give you insight and understanding on how these systems operate and what is considered safe and that type of thing. I probably won't be, a certified engineer at any point in time, but if I ever did, I have a leg to stand on at least to, learn faster than maybe someone else. It's not guaranteed, but still, it's nice to have. It's nice to know. Sending with all these like schedules. I never knew about a lot of these railroads and their operations and where they were running trains, but it does give insight and it's very uh you know it's bountiful knowledge that I've never realized existed, let alone was documented in such a nice manner. Like it's a time schedule, it's a timetable, and it's so simple, but it opens up the world in a way that just you feel like it could have been how it was back then in the present again. Like these schedules of like trains going in all directions. I never thought that such existed in the United States in after like the 50s and 60s, and in a way I was right, but at the same time I was also wrong. If you see what they did, right? Hold on, let me pull it out. Like it's just absolutely fascinating the extent of the services that they had back in like even 1960s, right? I have this one from the Milwaukee Road. I paid $5 for it, but it's a fairly decent amount of information, right? You can go from like Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and they had several trains running between the stations. There's also a page on connections in Chicago. You have the Gulf Mobile and Ohio Railroad from Chicago to St. Louis, the New York Central System from Chicago, Buffalo, Albany, New York, and Boston, the Pennsylvania Railroad with Chicago, Washington, and New York, and all these other connections and train services and the times. You can see that on the Pennsylvania Railroad, they had the train from Chicago to New York, 5 trains a day, 10:10 a.m. I believe, or maybe 10:10 p.m., 5:30 a.m., p.m., who knows? I mean, this is I haven't looked at this page before, so I'm not too familiar with it, but I've seen some of the other ones. But just seeing this, it's fascinating. Something new in railroading. Creative Cruise of the Milwaukee Road is the little advertisement thing when you first open up the book. How they're making the Milwaukee Road America's resourceful railroad. Every railroad has train crews, yard crews, track crews. But the Milwaukee Road has something new in railroading. Creative crews. These crews are made up of idea men, and they work in all departments of this railroad. Theirs is a dynamic, creative approach to problems that breaks with traditions and pioneer new ideas. How much of it is true? Who knows nowadays? But is it fascinating that this existed? Yes, absolutely. Here's page 10, right? Minneapolis to Deer Lodge, and they run through Aberdeen, Miles City, and Butte. Or Butte, I don't know. I don't know the pronunciation for that. But 2 trains a day, right? You have the daily, well, 2 trains a day, one round trip, technically, from at least from what I interpreted, right? Like you leave 8:40 p.m. from Minneapolis and you arrive, I believe, 2 days. Yeah, it looks like 2 days at 5 p.m. at Deer Lodge, and it's 1,100 miles. It's is it? Oh no, 2 days, but still, point made. This type of thing is just it's fascinating. You have like these family fairs. You don't see this type of advertising nowadays. Some of it has resurged with Amtrak, but it's not likely the same extent as this, let alone the depth. When I look at the when I look at the train schedules, right, the new ones for the MBTA, it's very simple. You can fit. It's a little booklet, right, and they're not too big, but sometimes I feel like they're hard to find. They're at South Station, sure, North Station too, but how much more, you know? Nowadays, of course, you have the internet, but to have these paper ones, it always is rather helpful, at least for general knowledge and ideas. Back then, they were vital. Not so much now, but again, I think I have a point made there. That's the type of passion I hope and desire when I do transit, when I do this advocacy. I want people to have that same feeling, that same energy, and that desire to do what they can to improve and to support, advocate for this beneficial system. I get there are problems with the T, and I am willing to admit those problems. Porter Square has the issue with the water flooding into the track bed. It has the panels that are decrepit and who knows when they were last replaced. You can see water damage and what I can assume is mold. State Street is absolutely disaster in the ends of the stations where like you can see the water damage and the rust building up. Even like Aquarium 2, it wasn't as bad as it was maybe a year ago, but it keeps building up because of the salt and the air and the water. You know, it just water keeps dripping into these stations and it keeps deteriorating their condition, let alone the smells of the elevators and the problems of trying to clean those up, right? And you have the escalators as well, and the fact that a majority of them are not properly inspected, right? They're out of their inspection dates for who knows how long. Could be a couple months, could be a couple years, but it varies by escalator. Some of them are and have been inspected, right? And they are up to standard, at least based off of the paper that you see on the bottom of the escalator or at the top, depending. It shows you the inspection date and how long it lasts. Quite a few of them now I noticed are having them, but it's such a slow pace of these inspections, right? That by the time they go through the whole system, they have to go back and do it again anyways, because there are a lot of escalators on the system easily. South Station itself has, I believe, 6 or 7 at the minimum. Chinatown is, I believe, 1 or 2, which is not too bad. But every station that has ADA accessibility within the subway has some sort of escalator system on top of the elevators and on top of the stairs, all of which should and ought to be inspected. Make sure they're safe, make sure that they can be in operation. but it's not always the case, and you have to make that known not only to people to encourage them to advocate with you and to point this out to the team and be transparent and have accountability, but also to get it fixed in hopes that people would be encouraged to ride when they do get fixed or to continue to ride despite the fact that it may not be getting fixed. Like, there are dangers and risks when taking transit, especially when it comes to the infrastructure, but it's one of those things where you have to balance both of them. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of, brainstorming to get it right. But once you get it right, it will become much easier. I hope that one day for these meetings, not just for the trolley buses, but just the regular board meetings, people will come to them. More than 10, I don't think it's asking a lot for half of the room to be filled. When there are issues in Chinatown, right, and CPA is involved, easily three quarters, right? Half is being easy on them. They can they can do three quarters. I know they can fight for three quarters of a room to be filled. They can do that, but transit can't, and that's because a lot of people who rely on transit are unable to be able to come to these meetings, have no idea that the meetings are occurring, or honestly, for a lot of people, probably don't care enough to come sit for an hour at what's basically something that they probably do at work if they're an office worker, or something that will probably retain or believe they have no meaning to those who have been using the system for years now and have continued to face these problems with no change in sight. You gotta convince those people to come and to make time worthwhile. You got to convince them. But when you do, and when you gain a new person to come regularly or even every so often, it can make the difference and it can make the voice and the value of people's words hold more water and more meaningful. Sometimes it does come off as easy and simple, but at the same time, it is difficult. And that's the type of thing I'm doing, and it is a passion. But that is the type of thing when it comes to running transit and to advocate for it. This isn't just for MBTA in Boston. This goes for New York City's MTA, even the LIRR, SEPTA, NJ Transit, BART, Mooney, even in Canada. You need people to come to the meetings and to show force and show that you care enough and you care so much that you're willing to take time out of your day, even risking your job, to come up to these meetings and tell the general manager and the board straight up that there's a problem on the system and it has to be fixed because it's affecting your job, your livelihood, and those of your loved ones and your friends, your neighbors. It's tightly connected, and it feels like one of the strongest possibilities to form communities out of people who live far from one another. A lot of people that I am building these relations with when it comes to transit, we all don't live within a quarter mile of each other. Easily 5, 10 miles. But the transit is what makes our community. It's what brings us together. Both literally to bring us together, but also the issues surrounding transit are the passions and the desires for change that make coming to these meetings worthwhile. And I love that. I really do. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it's like it's a struggle. But in the end, when it's all said and done, it's like you come out a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more knowledgeable, and you feel like you grew a little bit more than when you first came in. That's both going into the meeting itself and also entering the realm of like transit advocacy. I had a whole conversation with a friend of mine that I gained a relation with because of this because of transit. Had it not been for these meetings and the desire, it really wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have ever met him. He's a very smart guy and very knowledgeable in transit. That's what you get from engineers. I'm not an engineer, but he informs me and tells me things that had I not met him, I would have never known or even known that much in detail. What are the differences in batteries? What affects batteries? How, these, like, I talk about these panels as if I knew. It's like, no, he had to show me. We had a day after one of the meetings, right, where we just walked through the stations. He showed me around and pointed out things that I never knew, like, or took notice. I knew about some of them. There are some stations where I've been where it's just like so in your face you can't ignore it. But then there's the little things, the ones that the T tries to hide or is just not expressive about the problems with. And it takes someone to point out these issues. That's not just for me, but that's for everyone else. People need to know what's wrong and what's happening, and again, it's not just with here, it's with everywhere. And it's not just with the issue of transit, but just in general when it comes to advocating for any problem. You gotta get people to come in together and show and convince them that their time is worth it and that what they're doing is worth their time. Otherwise, it may just be a one-off thing and they might not come again, or they'll show their support, but it might feel half-hearted because they don't come as often, or they only came for the one and never again. That's what you really have to do, and that's the struggle, but also the passion of advocacy. But yeah, those are my thoughts, and that's my little talk for today. Oh, like it's like this is going to be straight up posted, unedited, my thoughts. And oh my, I went on longer than I had thought or expected. But yeah, I like when these meetings come, right? Find out in advance, tell people in advance, and try to fill the room. Because the difference between your voice being heard and not could be just because 10 people come in doesn't mean they'll probably listen. But if they come in with the whole room filled up to the brim, or so many people that you're spewing or people have to stand, you did a good thing. And the problem's serious enough that people are getting up from their workplaces, from school or whatever, to come in and say the same exact problem. Because the more people say that same exact problem, the more they'll be convinced, okay, this isn't just a one-off complaint. This is something that regular, average people are taking notice, and something has to be done. People are angry enough or concerned enough that they're taking time out of their lives to come speak. It's a point of emotion when you see the regulars, right? Myself, my buddy, my other buddies, people within the same organization as me. It's like they're the regulars. You expect them to come. All these new faces, something is serious right now, and we should probably take that seriously. That's the type of force and impact you want to bring with you. And again, it could be a one-off thing, but if that issue is really important to you, and if it's the meeting that could make or break this issue, or the bill or whatever it could be, the time is worth it to invest to bring the people to bear the numbers that you can noticeably see people on the board sweat a little because of how many people are there. I want to have a day where we come into Ten Park Plaza and there's just so many people that the AC cannot keep up with the amount of body heat being released from all the people standing in the room. That's how you know how bad it is. If that happens, how bad the system is, how all the issues going on, that's your kind of dream day, dream meeting. And if at least a quarter can speak, whether it's their own issues on behalf of others, yeah, that has an impact. And I encourage everyone who has that feeling to go do it. It's not just self-enjoyment, but also it's passion. And it's also concern for your life. These are policies that change and impact your life day by day. And these are the policies and issues that really matter. Transit does matter. And so does your voice. And so does your time. Your time means something. And if you want to invest your time and commit towards something, do it. You'll feel better. And you feel like you're living your life to your fullest. Sometimes it does get drowning, you get bored or you feel drained. But if you can get the success as well, it's like sometimes it does feel worthwhile. Sometimes you do lose at times. We have before, but it doesn't mean we're stopping because that's how much we care about the problem. And even if it is an issue that's like, okay, this has been decided, we cannot make any more changes. That doesn't mean to stop. That means to keep going. Whether that's for that issue, right? In the case of us, battery buses, or to find something else that could be threatened by similar problems. For us, that's also the commuter rail. Yes, we may have lost a little bit on the battery buses, but not everything has yet been set in stone. We can still have potential to convince. At the same time, there are other problems that feel like closely associated where you should keep up that momentum onto that new issue. Battery electric trains exist, and that's not okay to try to, bring those into fruition. Same thing with the battery electric buses. There are better electric options, and although it seems like we lost in the bus department, trains are still under threat by, battery replacements. We'll fight there. Or in the case of the buses, the fight's not over yet, and that's the whole thing. That's the gist. That's the whole point. Keep going. Don't give up because advocacy matters. Transit matters. Urban planning does matter. And fighting for urbanism in the United States and North America as a whole matters. It's worth our time, and it's worth the efforts. Because at the end of the day, transit moves so many people that it is insanely ridiculous that we can't bring the same numbers as a NIMBY community housing project. If NIMBYs can bring in 50, 100 people, we should be able to bring 500. Anyways, that's it. Have a good night, guys. And perhaps I'll upload again someday. Something more than just a blank screen. But yeah, see you guys. 再见，拜拜。